Captain Ryan Hayes awoke to a quiet glow washing over the crystal plateau. The stars above twinkled more brightly than ever, their light reflecting in the crystalline surface beneath him. The tiny alien girls hovered nearby, their wings beating softly, their expressions serious yet expectant. Ryan could feel the hum of energy pulsing through the plateau, like a giant heartbeat synced with the universe itself. He rose slowly, stretching his arms, and glanced at the girls. They seemed restless, flitting back and forth, their gestures precise but full of anticipation. It was clear something was about to happen, something important. He felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness in his chest. The larger girl darted forward, then hovered in front of him, wings extended in a display of authority. Her glowing eyes met his, and Ryan sensed her intention. It was time for the final trial, the culmination of everything he had learned. He stepped to the center of the plateau, where the crystal surface reflected the vastness of the sky above. The girls hovered on either side, their tiny bodies radiating a soft light that intertwined with the shimmer of the stars. The energy in the air intensified, vibrating through him, through the girls, and through the plateau itself. And then it began. From the heavens above, the stars shifted. Constellations formed intricate patterns, spinning slowly, their light casting glowing trails across the plateau. Ryan realized immediately that this was not mere decoration, it was communication. The stars were speaking, in a language that transcended words. Their message was clear: a mate must be chosen. The tiny girls hovered closer, their expressions anxious. Ryan noticed that their wings flickered in a rhythm that mirrored the energy of the stars. He understood without needing explanation. The cosmic decision would determine the bond between him and the girls. One of them, or perhaps both, would be his companion in a way sanctioned by the stars themselves. Ryan's heart pounded. He had grown fond of both girls in the short time they had been together. They were playful, intelligent, and deeply connected to the planet's energy. Choosing between them felt impossible. But as he looked at their small, expectant faces, he realized that the choice might not be his to make. A glowing stream of energy descended from the sky, forming a column in the center of the plateau. Ryan stepped into it cautiously. The girls followed, hovering at his sides. The energy flowed around them, connecting them in a luminous cocoon. Ryan felt warmth spreading through him, a gentle vibration that carried the essence of the planet, the girls, and the stars above. Images flashed in his mind, visions of other worlds, of civilizations, and of countless stars. The stars were showing him the vastness of the universe, reminding him that this bond was part of something far greater than his own desires. It was not just about affection or loyalty. It was about unity, understanding, and harmony across species. The smaller girl reached out, her tiny hand brushing his arm. Ryan felt her pulse of energy, soft but insistent. She was asking him in her own way to accept her fully, to trust the bond they shared. The larger girl mirrored the gesture, her wings glowing brighter, and Ryan felt the same pull from her. Both girls were offering themselves, yet he could sense their worry. They did not want to compete, but neither could control the cosmic decision. The stars' energy pulsed again, stronger this time. Ryan realized that the universe would choose based not on strength, size, or ambition, but on the purity of heart and unity of spirit. He closed his eyes and focused on what he felt for both girls. Not possession, not dominance, but respect, care, and connection. The energy shifted suddenly, forming two glowing orbs above the girls. Ryan understood the meaning immediately. The stars were presenting a choice. Only one orb would remain connected to him, the other would drift away. But as he watched, something unexpected happened. Instead of separating, the orbs began to merge, the light intertwined, forming a new pattern, a radiant shape that connected him with both girls simultaneously. The stars pulsed in response, brighter and warmer than ever. Ryan opened his eyes to see the girls' wings glowing with an intensity that left him breathless. They were happy but also amazed. The stars had chosen to allow the bond with both girls at the same time, a rare cosmic triad, one that had never been seen before. Ryan's chest swelled with emotion. He felt the energy of the girls, the planet, and the stars flowing through him. It was not just a connection, it was a harmony, a unity that transcended language, species, and even space. He could sense the girls' joy, their relief, and their trust in him. The larger girl flitted closer, circling his head in a delicate dance. The smaller girl landed on his shoulder, brushing his cheek with her tiny hand. Ryan laughed softly, feeling tears of happiness in his eyes. We did it, he whispered. The stars. They chose us all. The girls responded with a chorus of tiny, melodic voices, their laughter echoing like chimes across the plateau. Ryan felt the bond deepen with each sound, each movement. He realized that this connection was more than companionship. It was a shared understanding, a promise to protect, respect, and grow together. As the energy began to settle, Ryan looked out across the plateau. The forest below shimmered, alive with the planet's acknowledgement of the cosmic decision. Every leaf, every crystal, every pulse of light seemed to celebrate their union. He had proven himself not just as a human, but as a being capable of empathy, courage, and understanding across worlds. The girls hovered close, their tiny bodies radiating warmth and light. Ryan reached out gently, letting his fingers brush against theirs. The sensation was electric, a connection that went beyond touch. He felt their thoughts, their emotions, and their excitement for the adventures yet to come. For the first time, he understood the true meaning of being chosen. It was not about possession, control, or dominance. It was about trust, respect, and shared purpose. The stars had judged him and found him worthy, not because of his strength, but because of his heart. The girl's wings fluttered softly as they guided him toward the edge of the plateau. From there, Ryan could see the vast expanse of the forest, the glowing lakes, and the rivers of light stretching to the horizon. It was a view unlike anything he had ever witnessed. He felt a surge of gratitude, not just for surviving the trials, but for being welcomed into a world that was alive, aware, and wondrous. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice carrying across the plateau. "Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for everything." The girls responded with gentle chirps and gestures, their bodies glowing in response to his words. Ryan smiled, feeling a profound sense of peace. The trials were over, the stars had chosen, and the bond had been solidified. Yet he knew this was only the beginning. There were still mysteries to uncover, challenges to face, and adventures waiting beyond the horizon. As night fell over the glowing forest, the stars above shimmered in complex patterns. Ryan sat on the crystal edge, the girls nestled close to him. He could feel their tiny pulses, rhythmic and steady, blending with the energy of the planet and the distant starlight. It was a feeling of unity, of harmony, and of belonging, an experience that transcended words. Somewhere in the distance, the rivers of light reflected the stars above, creating a mirror of the cosmic decision. Ryan realized that the universe was vast and mysterious, but that even a human could find a place within it, guided by courage, compassion, and understanding. The girls' tiny voices whispered in unison, though no sound reached his ears. Yet he understood perfectly. We are together. The stars have chosen well. Ryan leaned back, letting the glowing crystal support him. He looked up at the stars, feeling their steady pulse and the warmth of the bond with the two tiny aliens. He knew that he had been forever changed, not just by the trials, but by the recognition that humanity, with its curiosity, courage, and heart, could find a place even in the most alien of worlds. The night deepened, the stars above shimmering with infinite light. The girls rested beside him, their wings folding gently, and Ryan felt the pulse of energy ebbing and flowing like a quiet lullaby. He knew that this bond, sanctioned by the stars themselves, was rare and precious. It was a gift of connection, trust, and unity that transcended species, size, and even worlds. And somewhere in the heart of the glowing forest and across the vast reaches of space, the stars pulsed once more as if whispering a promise. Together, you will face the universe. Together, you will rise. Captain Ryan Hayes closed his eyes, feeling the tiny hands of the girls against his skin, their pulses in harmony with his own heartbeat. For the first time, he felt complete, not just as a human, not just as an explorer, but as a part of something extraordinary, chosen by the stars and bound to two tiny, incredible beings who had claimed him as theirs. And in that quiet moment, the universe seemed to acknowledge them, the stars shining brighter than ever, a testament to courage, heart, and the rarest bond of all. The next morning, Alex awoke to the soft glow of the alien sun filtering through the towering trees. The forest was alive with strange sounds, chirps, rustling leaves, and the occasional deep growl from hidden predators. He stretched and looked at Lyra, who was already standing nearby. Her amber eyes were fixed on him, alert, sharp, and yet calm. "Time to move," Lyra said in her melodic, translated voice. Alex nodded, rubbing his eyes. The last few days had been overwhelming. He had survived the crash, faced predators, and been saved by a creature unlike any other. But he knew that if he wanted to live on this planet, he would have to learn quickly. Lyra led him deeper into the jungle. The trees grew even taller, their trunks wide enough that Alex could barely wrap his arms around one. Strange vines hung from the branches, and glowing plants lit their path like lanterns. Alex noticed that the plants pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat. The world was alive in a way he had never experienced. "Watch," Lyra instructed, crouching low. She moved silently, almost as if she was part of the jungle itself. She paused, then pointed at a large glowing plant. "Food," she said. Alex frowned. The plant looked beautiful, almost like a flower. "Is it safe to eat?" he asked. Lyra tapped it lightly with her claw. A small creature scurried away. "Yes, not all life here is dangerous. Some are for eating. Learn the signs?" Alex bent down, examining the plant. Its leaves were thick, slightly sweet-smelling and covered with tiny, harmless hairs. He plucked a few pieces and tasted them. Surprisingly, they were edible, almost refreshing. "Good," Lyra said, nodding. "You must learn quickly. This jungle does not forgive mistakes." For the next several hours, Lyra taught him basic survival skills. She showed him which plants could be eaten, how to recognize signs of nearby predators, and how to move quietly through the thick undergrowth. Alex struggled at first. He was clumsy, slow, and sometimes terrified, but Lyra was patient. Her movements were graceful and efficient, and she encouraged him gently, correcting mistakes without anger. "You are stronger than you know," she said at one point, watching him lift a heavy branch. "But your strength is slow. Learn to be fast too." Alex tried to follow her example, moving quickly and quietly. It was exhausting, but he was learning. He began to notice patterns in the jungle, the way predators moved, the sounds of distant rivers, the pulse of glowing plants. Lyra's lessons were practical, yes, but they were also teaching him something deeper: awareness, intuition, and trust in one's instincts. As the sun climbed higher, Lyra led him to a river. Its water was clear and warm, with a faint blue glow from the minerals it contained. Small fish darted beneath the surface. Lyra waded in easily, her large feet barely making a ripple. She gestured for Alex to do the same. Alex hesitated. The water was cold at first, then strangely soothing. He tried to catch a fish with his hands, but failed miserably. Lyra chuckled, a soft musical sound. Then in a blur, she scooped a fish from the river with one hand and handed it to him. "Practice," she said. "You will improve." Alex smiled, feeling a mixture of relief and admiration. Lyra was not only strong, but also intelligent and patient. She could have left him to struggle or even perished in the jungle alone. But she had chosen to stay. He realized again that she had claimed him, not just as a mate in her culture, but as someone she would protect. After the river, Lyra led him to a small clearing where she had built a simple shelter. It was made of woven vines and large leaves, sturdy enough to withstand rain and wind. Alex helped reinforce it with branches and rocks. Together, they created a safe space, a small piece of security in an otherwise dangerous world. That evening, as they sat near a fire made from gathered wood, Alex finally had a moment to speak more freely. "Lyra, why me? Why save me?" he asked. Lyra's ears twitched. She looked at him seriously. "Your kind is fragile here, but you survived the crash. That shows strength. And now you are mine. I protect you and you follow me. Together we survive." Alex nodded slowly. The words were simple, yet carried weight. I trust you," he said. Lyra's tail flicked slightly, a sign Alex had learned meant approval. "Good, trust is important. Without it, neither survives." The following days passed in a rhythm of learning and exploration. Alex grew stronger, faster, and more confident. He began to recognize the calls of different creatures, the signs of predators and the patterns of the jungle. Lyra remained by his side, guiding, correcting, and teaching him with a mixture of discipline and care. One morning, as they moved through a dense part of the jungle, Alex noticed unusual footprints. "Lyra, these tracks, they're huge," he said. She crouched and examined them. "Not ours. Another predator. We must be careful. It is a hunter, but not from this territory." Alex's heart pounded. He had survived some dangerous encounters before, but now, the threat felt closer, more intelligent. Lyra's eyes narrowed, ears flicking. She gestured for him to follow silently. They moved through the undergrowth, avoiding broken branches and hidden vines. Alex marveled at her skill. Every step was calculated, precise. She was a perfect hunter, perfectly adapted to this world. Suddenly, the predator appeared, a massive, feline-like creature, larger than anything Alex had seen. Its eyes glowed red and it moved with terrifying speed. It roared, a deep sound that shook the trees. Lyra stepped forward, positioning herself between Alex and the predator. "Stay behind me," she instructed. The predator lunged. Lyra dodged effortlessly, swiping with claws that gleamed in the sunlight. Alex watched in awe as she moved with unmatched agility, her every strike calculated and deadly. The predator attacked again and again, but Lyra was faster, stronger, and smarter. Within minutes, the creature lay defeated, groaning softly on the ground. Alex's knees went weak. I can't believe you just did that," he said. Lyra looked at him seriously. "You survived because you follow me. Remember that. You are mine. To harm you is to challenge me. Do not forget this." Alex nodded, swallowing hard. He was beginning to understand. Her claiming him as her mate was not just a ritual, it was a bond of survival. She would protect him, but he must trust her completely and follow her guidance. Over the next week, Alex's skills improved dramatically. He learned to recognize edible plants, build traps for small animals, and navigate the jungle without making noise. Lyra's training was strict but fair. She pushed him to his limits, knowing that only through challenge could he grow stronger. At night, they would sit by the fire, sharing silence or simple conversation. Alex learned more about Lyra's world. Her people were descended from a long line of guardians. Creatures evolved to survive the dangerous jungle and protect their territory. Their size and strength were necessary for survival, and their instincts to claim and protect mates ensured that outsiders like Alex could coexist safely. Alex began to feel a strange sense of belonging. Despite the alien world, despite the danger, he was learning, growing, and adapting. He was no longer just a human stranded on a strange planet. He was part of a partnership that could face any challenge together. One day, while exploring near a glowing river, Alex asked, "Lyra, do you trust me?" Her ears flicked. She tilted her head and studied him. "You have grown stronger. You follow my guidance. I trust you to survive, but trust is earned every day. You must prove yourself continuously." Alex nodded. "I understand. I will." Lyra's tail flicked once, and she smiled faintly, a rare expression Alex had come to recognize as approval. Weeks passed. Alex's confidence grew. He could hunt, gather, and defend himself under Lyra's guidance. He even began experimenting with tools, crafting simple devices from plants, stones, and remnants of his ship. Lyra watched with interest, occasionally offering advice. Their teamwork improved and their bond deepened. One morning, while scouting near a dense grove, they spotted a distant group of predators moving toward them. Lyra's ears twitched. "We must prepare," she said. Alex nodded, and together they set traps and strategized. When the predators attacked, Alex and Lyra fought as a team. Lyra's strength and speed, combined with Alex's traps and quick thinking, allowed them to fend off the attackers. Alex realized that survival was no longer about him alone. It was about them together. Their partnership was more powerful than either of them could be alone. As night fell, they returned to their shelter. Alex looked at Lyra, feeling a mix of admiration, respect, and something he couldn't yet name. She was more than a protector. She was a guide, a mentor, and a companion. Lyra curled beside him, purring softly. "You are learning quickly," she said. "Soon you may survive without my constant guidance. But remember, the jungle is never forgiving. You must remain vigilant." Alex nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest. For the first time since the crash, he felt hopeful. He was no longer just a human lost in the jungle. He was part of something extraordinary. A partnership with a being stronger, faster, and wiser than any human he had known. And slowly he began to understand what it meant to be claimed as her mate, not as ownership, but as a promise. A promise of protection, survival, and trust. Tomorrow he would learn even more. The days on Zithra passed with a quiet rhythm. Ethan's mornings began with careful observation, setting up his cameras and making meticulous notes. But as he spent more time near the alien female and her nest, he noticed subtle changes in both of their behaviors. The initial wariness she had shown had gradually softened. Now she seemed almost expecting him, her eyes following his movements as though she were aware of the patterns he followed daily. It started with small gestures. When Ethan approached the cliff's edge, she would tilt her head in recognition and slightly lower her wings, a signal he interpreted as calm acceptance. When he stepped back, she would emit soft, low hums, almost like a song. Ethan found himself responding instinctively, pausing when she paused, moving slowly to maintain her trust. He realized that their interaction had evolved into something more than simple observation. Ethan began to notice her intelligence in ways that were both fascinating and humbling. One afternoon he watched as she carefully rearranged the eggs, ensuring each was optimally placed for warmth and safety. He marveled at the precision and care, noting how she used her claws delicately, avoiding any unnecessary pressure. It was clear that the survival of the next generation rested heavily on her decisions, and her attention to detail reflected an intelligence that rivaled humans in its focus and efficiency. Yet what intrigued him most was her awareness of him. She seemed to understand that his presence was both harmless and significant. At times she would watch him experiment with equipment, circling around him as though evaluating his actions. Ethan began to recognize patterns in her responses. She learned quickly, adapting her behavior depending on his movements. When he adjusted a camera or moved closer to the nest, she would shift slightly, her wings angling to protect her eggs. But when he sat still, she relaxed, sometimes letting him observe almost at eye level. Ethan spoke into his recorder one evening. She is learning, not just instinctively but deliberately. She watches, interprets, and adapts. It is unlike anything I have encountered. She recognizes me as part of her world, part of her life and her perception. This is beyond observation. I am becoming part of a bond I did not anticipate. The realization weighed heavily on him. He had come to Zythera to study, to maintain professional detachment, but he was no longer merely an observer. The alien female had mistaken him for a mate in her own understanding, and that misconception was shaping every interaction. Over the following days, Ethan began to respond to her gestures more deliberately. When she made soft hums, he would remain still, listening intently. When she tilted her head or spread her wings, he would move slowly, acknowledging her signals. The bond grew, silent but undeniable. It was built not on words but on understanding, trust, and shared experience. One morning, as he approached the nest, he noticed a subtle shift in her behavior. She had moved closer to the cliff edge than usual, wings slightly spread, eyes focused on him. Ethan froze, sensing that something important was about to happen. He stepped carefully, aware that the slightest mistake could trigger a defensive response. She emitted a series of low, melodic hums, circling him cautiously. Ethan recognized this pattern from previous observations. It was a greeting, a recognition signal. He nodded slightly, lowering his body in a gesture he hoped she would interpret as non-threatening. For a long moment they simply observed each other, the wind rustling through the cliffside vegetation. Suddenly she crouched near the nest, gesturing with her wing toward him. Ethan understood the meaning immediately. She wanted him to come closer, to be part of the space she considered safe. He moved slowly, careful not to startle her. As he approached, she shifted slightly, allowing him to get near the eggs without reacting aggressively. Ethan felt a strange mix of fear and awe. She was enormous, powerful, and utterly alien, but her trust in him was growing. He knelt near the nest, careful not to touch the eggs, and whispered softly, "I won't hurt you, or them." She tilted her head as if understanding his words and emitted another low hum. Ethan realized then that communication between species was possible, not with language, but with intent, gesture, and mutual understanding. Over the next week, their bond deepened. Ethan observed her hunting behaviors and survival instincts up close. She taught him in her own way how she approached prey, how she read the wind and the terrain, and how she balanced caution with efficiency. Ethan recorded every detail, fascinated by her intelligence and adaptability. She responded to his presence as if he were part of her team, guiding him through her routines and behaviors. It became clear to Ethan that she saw him not merely as an observer, but as someone integral to her life and the safety of her nest. When he stepped too close to the cliff edge or made a sudden movement, she would hiss softly and spread her wings to shield him from potential danger. When he moved carefully, respecting her space, she relaxed, wings folding gently around her eggs. The dynamic was delicate, built on trust and awareness. Ethan began to experience emotions he had not anticipated. He felt admiration for her strength, intelligence, and protective instincts. He felt responsibility for her safety, as though he were part of her world. And he felt something deeper, a connection that went beyond observation, beyond science, beyond words. He was no longer just a human observing alien life. He was a participant in a bond that transcended species. One evening, as the sun set over the cliffs, Ethan sat quietly, observing her from a safe distance. She curled protectively around her eggs, wings folded gracefully, eyes reflecting the fading light. Ethan whispered to himself, "I am part of this." In her eyes, "She trusts me. She includes me in her world, and I feel something I cannot explain." The alien female responded with a series of soft hums, a sound that resonated deep within Ethan's chest. It was as if she understood his thoughts, or at least his intent. The bond was growing, silent but undeniable, a connection built on mutual awareness and respect. As the nights passed, Ethan began to learn more about her social signals. When she flared her wings, it meant alertness or caution. When she tilted her head, it indicated curiosity. Low hums were communication, sometimes a warning, sometimes a reassurance. He adapted to her rhythms, moving in sync with her gestures, learning to anticipate her needs and responses. One day, a strong wind swept across the cliffs, carrying loose rocks and debris. Ethan stumbled slightly, and the alien female reacted instantly. She spread her wings wide, placing herself between him and the falling rocks. Her protective instincts had extended beyond her eggs. Now she included him in her care. Ethan froze, realizing the full significance of the bond. She had mistaken him for a mate, and in doing so, she had chosen to protect him as fiercely as she did her offspring. Ethan's mind raced. He had always valued scientific observation, detachment, and rationality. But here on Scythera, none of those principles applied. The alien female's perception had created a relationship that was real in her understanding, and he had to respect it. He whispered softly, "I understand. I will not betray your trust." In the following days, Ethan experimented carefully, testing the limits of her trust. He moved closer to observe behaviors more clearly, and she allowed it, adjusting her posture to include him in her protective space. He began to anticipate her responses, learning to read her signals intuitively. The bond grew stronger, built on shared experience, awareness, and trust. One afternoon, as he recorded her tending the eggs, he noticed a predator approaching from the forest below. A large four-legged creature with sharp claws and teeth moved stealthily toward the nest. Ethan's heart pounded. He reached for his flare gun but hesitated. Realizing that the alien female would handle the situation, she reacted instantly, spreading her wings to appear larger, hissing loudly, and charging at the predator with a force and speed Ethan had not imagined. The predator hesitated, then retreated, clearly intimidated by her presence. She returned to the nest, eyes scanning the area, and for the first time she looked at Ethan in a way that suggested approval. He had witnessed her intelligence, strength, and protective instincts firsthand, and the bond between them had deepened immeasurably. That night, Ethan sat near the cliff's edge, reflecting on everything he had observed. He had come to Scythera as a scientist intent on detachment and observation, yet he had become part of the alien female's life, trusted and included in her world. He realized that their bond was no longer a misunderstanding. It was a connection based on awareness, respect, and mutual reliance. Ethan whispered to himself, "I came to observe, but I have become part of her world. She trusts me, protects me, and teaches me. I am no longer just a human. I am something more in her eyes, and I feel more than I ever expected." As the stars appeared in the alien sky, Ethan watched her fold her wings around the eggs, eyes calm and focused. He knew the days ahead would be filled with challenges, discoveries, and perhaps danger. But he also knew that the bond they had formed was unbreakable, a connection that transcended species and understanding. And so, on Scythera under the glowing stars and the alien wind, Ethan's journey continued. He was no longer just an observer. He was a participant, a partner, and a witness to the intelligence, strength, and grace of a species that had mistaken him for their mate, and, in doing so, had. Days passed in a rhythm of training, exploration, and cautious survival. Alex had grown stronger, faster and more confident under Lyra's watchful guidance. He could move quietly through the dense jungle, identify edible plants, and even fashion simple tools from the remnants of his ship and natural materials. But the jungle, beautiful as it was, had its own rules. It was alive, unpredictable, and unforgiving. One morning, as the sun filtered through the glowing canopy, Lyra stopped suddenly. Her ears twitched, and her sharp amber eyes scanned the surrounding trees. "Something is coming," she said in her melodic voice. Alex froze. "What do you mean?" Lyra crouched low, her tail flicking in a precise rhythm. "Rival predators. Not like the others you have faced. These are intelligent. They hunt in packs and they are fast." Alex's heart pounded. He had survived attacks before, but this sounded more serious. "How many?" he asked. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Enough to challenge us if we are careless. We must prepare." Together they moved swiftly through the jungle, seeking higher ground to survey the area. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Alex noticed the subtle signs Lyra had taught him: broken branches, faint paw prints, and disturbed undergrowth. These were clues, warning signals from the jungle itself. Lyra paused and pointed. "There, do you see them?" Alex squinted and finally made out the shapes. Several massive feline predators larger than the ones they had encountered before. Their eyes glowed a menacing red, and they moved with coordination and purpose. Alex swallowed hard. This was not a random attack, they were hunting. "We need a plan," Alex said, his voice tight with tension. Lyra nodded. "Follow my lead. We will use the terrain, the traps, and our strength. Together we are strong. Alone, you would not survive." Alex felt a mix of fear and determination. He had come a long way since the crash, but this was the ultimate test of everything he had learned. Lyra led him to a narrow gorge, a natural choke point that would limit the predator's movements. Using vines, stones, and sharpened branches, they began preparing traps. Alex worked quickly, guided by Lyra's instructions. He realized that her survival skills were unmatched. Every move was deliberate, every decision aimed at maximizing safety and efficiency. As they worked, Lyra spoke softly, almost to herself. "You are learning quickly. Soon you may survive on your own, but the jungle will always test you." Alex nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "I want to be ready. I don't want to fail you." Lyra glanced at him, her eyes softening slightly. "You are mine, Alex. To fail me is to endanger yourself. But I see your determination. That matters." The predators grew closer. Alex could hear their low growls, the snapping of branches as they approached. Lyra crouched beside him. "Prepare yourself," she said. The first predator appeared, leaping from the trees with terrifying speed. Lyra met it head-on, dodging its claws and swiping with her own. Alex watched, holding his breath as she fought with unmatched skill. The predator roared, then fell back, defeated by her strength. But more were coming. A second predator lunged at Alex from the side. He barely had time to react. Remembering Lyra's training, he dove to the side and triggered a simple snare they had prepared. The predator yelped and was momentarily trapped. Alex scrambled to help, throwing rocks to distract it until it broke free, only to retreat at the sight of Lyra approaching. The battle escalated. 3 more predators joined, circling them, testing their defenses. Lyra moved like a shadow, her movements fluid and precise. Alex triggered traps, used branches to push predators back, and relied on the instincts he had developed over weeks of training. It was exhausting, terrifying, and exhilarating all at once. Alex realized that survival was no longer about him alone. It was about teamwork, strategy, and trust. He watched Lyra constantly, learning from her, anticipating her movements and responding instinctively. Finally, after what felt like hours, the predators retreated. Their numbers were fewer, some wounded, others deciding the fight was too dangerous. Alex sank to the ground, breathing heavily. Lyra approached him, her tail brushing against his arm, a gesture of reassurance. "You survived," she said. "And you learned. That is important." Alex looked at her, a mixture of awe and gratitude in his eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you." Lyra shook her head slightly. "You could. You have grown stronger, but we are stronger together. Remember that. The jungle does not forgive weakness." For the first time, Alex truly understood what it meant to be claimed as her mate. It was not about ownership or dominance, it was about protection, trust, and partnership. Lyra had saved him, taught him, and now tested him. And he had proven himself. In the days that followed, Alex and Lyra explored more of the jungle. They discovered hidden caves, ancient trees, and strange glowing plants. Alex marveled at the ecosystem's complexity. Lyra explained the balance of life on the planet, predators, prey, and the intelligent creatures that once inhabited the now abandoned ruins. One afternoon, they came across a small herd of herbivorous creatures grazing near a river. Lyra crouched, observing silently. "Do you see?" she asked. "Everything moves with purpose. Nothing here is random. To survive, you must understand purpose. Every sound, every movement. It tells a story." Alex nodded, studying the herd. He noticed how the smaller creatures stayed close to the larger ones for protection. He began to understand the subtle signals in the jungle. The warning cries, the rustle of leaves, the flash of movement. Lyra's teachings were no longer just lessons in survival. They were lessons in awareness, patience, and respect for life. As they moved through the jungle, Alex began to rely on his own instincts more. He could anticipate the movements of smaller predators, identify safe paths, and even craft new traps without Lyra's guidance. She watched him closely, occasionally offering advice, but mostly allowing him to learn through experience. One evening, as they rested near a small waterfall, Alex asked a question that had been on his mind for weeks. "Lyra, why do you protect me? Why did you save me in the first place?" Lyra's ears twitched. She looked at him seriously, her amber eyes reflecting the glowing water. "You survived the crash. That shows strength. But more than that, your presence here matters. You are mine. To harm you is to challenge me, but to protect you, it is natural. You belong with me now," Alex swallowed. The words were strange, alien, and yet carried a weight that he could feel deep in his chest. I understand," he said. "And I trust you." Lyra's tail flicked, a gesture of approval. She leaned slightly closer, not threateningly but protectively. "Good, trust is necessary. Without it, neither of us survives." The next challenge came unexpectedly. While exploring near a glowing grove, they encountered a rival group of humanoid creatures, smaller than Lyra, but armed with crude weapons and advanced intelligence. They moved quickly, trying to claim the territory for themselves. Lyra growled, stepping in front of Alex. "Stay behind me," she instructed. The smaller creatures attacked in coordinated waves, testing their defenses. Lyra met them with incredible agility and strength, while Alex used traps and improvised weapons to create barriers and distractions. Together, they became an unstoppable team. Alex realized that his human ingenuity combined with Lyra's alien strength made them formidable. Each wave of attackers forced them to adapt, anticipate, and cooperate. By the time the final group retreated, Alex was exhausted but exhilarated. He had faced danger head-on and survived. Lyra studied him, her gaze sharp. "You have grown stronger," she said. "You are learning to survive not just with me, but because of me. That is the bond we share. You are no longer alone." Alex nodded, a sense of pride swelling within him. He had faced incredible danger, learned to fight, think, and adapt. He was no longer the inexperienced engineer who had crashed on this planet. He was a partner, a mate, and a survivor. As night fell, they returned to their shelter. The jungle around them was alive with glowing plants and distant roars. Alex looked at Lyra, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and connection. She had not only saved his life, but taught him to thrive in a world that had seemed impossible to survive. Lyra curled beside him, purring softly. "Tomorrow," she said, "we explore more. You will learn more. The jungle is vast and knowledge is power." Alex nodded, watching the soft glow of her eyes in the firelight. For the first time since the crash, he felt a true sense of belonging. He was not alone. He had a protector, a teacher, and a companion. Together, they could face any threat, survive any challenge, and thrive in a world that seemed designed to destroy them. He drifted to sleep with one thought in his mind. No matter what dangers came next, he and Lyra were stronger together. Their bond was unbreakable, their trust absolute, and their partnership a force that neither the jungle nor its predators could defeat. The ship drifted silently through the blackness of space. Stars twinkled coldly, distant and indifferent, while the human crew of the intrepid Dawn went about their routine checks. Marcus Hale moved quietly through the corridors, a steady rhythm of boots on metal echoing behind him. Unlike most of his fellow soldiers, he did not talk to anyone. Not because he disliked them, but because he had learned that silence was easier than explaining what he was beginning to hear. It started a few weeks ago, while the ship passed near the Zirath Dominion's outer sector. The other soldiers said it was nothing, just the hum of the ship or the lingering effects of space radiation. But Marcus knew it was something else. A voice, or more like a scream, reached him in moments of quiet. He had first dismissed it as imagination, the strain of endless patrols and long shifts. But the sound persisted. It was low, desperate, almost melodic in its terror, and it seemed to come from everywhere at once. During one of his night shifts, when the corridors were almost empty, Marcus pressed his hand against the cold metal wall and closed his eyes. The sound rose stronger now, reverberating through his mind. It was pain, deep and raw, not just fear or anger. It was pleading, calling out, begging for someone to notice. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Every fiber of his being told him to go, to retreat and forget it. But something stronger, something human, told him to follow it. He traced the sound through the ship down to a maintenance hatch that led to a sector labeled Restricted. Zirath Containment. A warning flashed red above the door, but Marcus did not hesitate. While the rest of the crew ignored the alerts, he could not. He opened the hatch quietly and slipped into the narrow tunnel. The hum of the ship faded behind him, replaced by the scream. It grew louder, more urgent. Marcus's heart pounded. He had never been someone who believed in ghosts or strange phenomena, but this felt real. The screams carried weight, sorrow, and a strange sense of loneliness that made the hair on his arms stand. The walls of the tunnel seemed to stretch endlessly, twisting and bending in ways that were almost unnatural. Yet Marcus pressed on, step by careful step. Finally, he reached a massive, sealed chamber. The door was far larger than anything he had seen, engraved with alien symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. Behind it, the sound of the screams was unbearable. Marcus could not move, frozen for a moment, staring at the door. He felt a strange connection, as though the voice somehow knew him, called for him by name even though he had never spoken it aloud. With a trembling hand, he activated the door panel. The lock hissed and clicked, and the door slid open with a sound like tearing silk. Inside, the room was vast, stretching higher than the eye could see. Shadows flickered against the walls, moving as if alive. In the center, floating slightly above the ground, was a figure. She was unlike any human, yet there was something unmistakably alive about her. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her hair floated around her head like a dark halo. Her eyes were closed, but Marcus felt her gaze pierce him as if she could see into his soul. Her hands were pressed to her temples, trembling, and her lips moved, forming sounds that made his heart ache. She was crying, but no tears fell. Her screams were psychic, echoes of her pain reaching into every corner of the chamber, and Marcus could feel it, not just hear it, feel it. Every nerve in his body screamed in sympathy. He wanted to run, to flee from this overwhelming force, but he could not. He stepped closer, his voice barely audible. I can hear you." The sound stopped for a brief moment. The figure's head snapped toward him and her eyes opened. They were dark, deep pools of anguish and ancient knowledge. Marcus stumbled back slightly, overwhelmed. Her gaze was not angry, not violent, but full of sorrow, as if she carried the weight of 1,000 lifetimes. "You hear me?" she whispered, her voice vibrating in his mind rather than his ears. Finally, someone. Marcus swallowed hard, his mouth dry. Who are you?" "I am Solara," she said, voice trembling. "The vampire queen of the Zirath, caged, forgotten, left to suffer while the galaxy thrives in ignorance. All my people are bound, all my power taken, and no one listens. No one cares." He took a cautious step forward. Why are you here? Why are you screaming?" Solara's eyes filled with a light, an almost imperceptible shimmer of hope. "Because someone might, finally. Because humans are strange. You feel things others ignore. You notice things others do not. You hear cries that others call madness." Marcus's stomach twisted. "Humans, you know humans." She let out a weak laugh, sad and hollow. "I know enough. You are the first to truly listen. Others, they hear only noise, but you hear meaning, and meaning matters." For a long moment, Marcus simply stood there, overwhelmed. Every part of him screamed to run. He had been trained to obey, to follow orders, to ignore the impossible. But every instinct in his body, the one that made humans survive when others could not. Told him to stay. I want to help, he said finally. Solara's eyes widened. Help? You cannot comprehend what that means. The Dominion will not allow it. They have taken everything from me. You could be the first to restore even a fragment of freedom. Marcus swallowed again. I'll try, that's all I can promise. Her laughter returned, faint, almost a sigh. That is enough. It is more than anyone else has done in centuries. The chamber was silent for a while except for the faint hum of the containment systems. Marcus realized that if he left, no one would believe him. They would call him mad or worse. But that did not matter. He had heard her. That was enough for now. He took another step closer, studying her more carefully. Chains, thin but glowing with energy, bound her wrists and ankles. The technology holding her captive was alien, centuries ahead of anything humans had seen. Yet Marcus noticed small flaws, tiny imperfections that a careful hand might exploit. His mind, trained in tactics and problem-solving, began to work quietly, calculating every possible move. You are thinking of freeing me, Solara said, almost as if reading his mind. Do you know what that means? If I escape, the Dominion will hunt you. If I fail, you will die. If you fail, everyone will die. Marcus nodded slowly. I know, but I can't ignore this. I won't. She studied him for a long moment, her eyes searching his, as if weighing the truth of his words against the lies of centuries. Finally, she nodded. Then you are the first human worth my trust, and I have very little left to give. Marcus felt a chill run through him, not fear, but a strange mixture of awe and determination. He had faced impossible missions before, situations where the odds were against him. But this was different. This was not about orders, strategy, or survival alone. This was about being human, about choosing to act when others did not. The chamber began to hum louder, and Marcus realized the containment fields were responding to their interaction. Her power, suppressed for centuries, pulsed faintly in response to his presence. It was as if the very act of listening, of acknowledging her pain, was enough to awaken something deep inside her. He took another step, carefully. Tell me, how do I help? Solara closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, there was a spark of life, a faint hope that had been absent before. First, you survive this night, she said softly. Then we begin. But beware, human. The galaxy does not forgive those who defy the Dominion. Marcus felt the weight of her words, heavy and real. Yet for the first time in his life, he did not hesitate. He had heard her cries, understood her suffering, and chosen to act. Whatever came next, he knew one thing. He was not just a soldier. He was the one who listened when everyone else turned away, and that, he realized, was enough to change everything.